Hey guys, I'm here at Oregon Tool. This is the factory in Oregon. It's in Milwaukee, and this is where they make all the chain for all around the world. This is kind of like the chocolate factory of chain making. This is Jake Wade, and this is Glenn Lovett, and we're just going to talk about chain and pick these guys' brain. They're like a wealth of knowledge, and I just came here to just talk about chain and get some of that knowledge out there to you guys and help you as a customer and get more knowledge of chain sharpening and chain in general out here. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
So a little bit about me. My name is Jake Wade, as Gordy alluded to. I've been with Oregon Tool for 20 years, back in their research and development laboratory. I currently inhabit the role of product applications engineer. And that's after many, many, many years of hands-on experience in our test lab and in the field, testing our products to their limits.
Well, Glenn Lovell. I've been with Oregon Tool for almost 35 years. I've had multiple roles. I spent 18 of that 35 in the test lab. And then my current position as a senior technical services technician, I've been there for over 10. So my main position or role is interacting with customers, end users, diagnosing problems, and education.
you do a lot of the trade shows too.
A lot of the trade shows.
Yeah.
Yep.
I met you probably 2 years ago.
About
You
2
gave
years
me
ago.
the first tour through the factory, but Glenn's wealth of knowledge, like guy just, 35 years is a long time, so.
Can't believe it's been 10 years. It seems like that was yesterday.
Yeah, it seems like it was
I
yesterday.
keep telling you,
Yeah.
look who's come crawling back when we come back to lab. So,
Yeah.
So sequences of chain, like you got full skip, semi skip, full comp.
right.
Everybody's always asking me, what do you run? What do you do? How do you choose?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. So those are the main three.
Yep.
We actually have four.
okay.
The fourth one being what we actually call full comp here at the factory is there's no gaps between the cutters. And then our standard sequence is, cutter pairs separated by one strap, and then you get into the semi skip and then full skip. But for sequence conversations, we have recommended bar lengths for sequences. So anything up to about 24 inches can run a standard sequence, and then between 24 to 32 would be semi-skip, and then anything above 32 is full skip. Now, like I said, those are recommendations. They're not hard set. There's a lot of intermixing going on there, but intermixing part will depend upon the power head that's being used
Right.
and the output of that particular saw.
I can add a little bit of color to that. So let's say for an example, you have a 372 XPW, big jug on it, right? And say you're kicking out 7-8 horsepower, say that you are. You can get away with a lot. You can get away with a full sequence or a standard sequence, long bar, with that horsepower. What we got to keep in mind is everything's a power match and a balance, right? If you have the power to get away with it, awesome. If you don't, then you're going to want to cut down your cutter engagement. It comes down to a fundamental of how much power you have available per cutter.
Yep.
With longer bars, you have more chain dragging around that bar, and it takes more energy just to spin that bar up, right? So you may consume a horsepower or two just spinning that chain. So yeah, you have 8 horsepower. It's awesome on the dyno. Everyone's super excited. But 2 of that's gone. So you only have 6 to make chips with. So, and then when you're looking at your diameter of media, say you have a 28 inch, a 36 inch bar in there, how many cutters are actually engaged at any one time? And how much is the variance between the depth gauge and the top plate?
Yeah.
Because that's your bite. If you have more bite, you're going to consume more power. Right? If you have less bite, you're going to consume less power. So everything's a balance based on your system and your feel and your operating range.
Yeah. We were talking off camera about finding that balance, like between all the components.
Right.
You can't build a perfectly super sharp race chain and
Expect it to last.
expect it to last
Right, yeah.
in harsh conditions. It's just not going to happen. So you have to find, a balance between the whole unit.
Yeah, well, we strive to do that, right? So we can make a chain however we want, and we have historically made race chains.
Yep.
We no longer do that now, but we can make it however we want. If we want a pinnacle performance out of the box, we can do that today. It's no problem. We fundamentally understand the geometries for that, and our cutters are well suited to take that geometry. But we have to strike that balance between pinnacle performance and durability, right? And that is an engineering trade-off at its foundation. You want that razor sharp fine edge. It's a very fine and a very sensitive edge. If you broaden that angle out a little bit, just like you would on your pocket knife, then it's a less sensitive edge, right? And we have different cutter types also, whether it be full chisel, semi-chisel, micro chisel, chamfer, chipper. They're all different types for different applications.
Yeah.
That's some, I mean, shameless plug here. I'm an applications engineer. That's my trade. There's a chain for every single application. If you're ripping, we got a chain for that. We have chains that can do that, but we have chains for it.
Yeah.
Right? If you're running that long bar with low power, just because of whatever restrictions you have or whatever you have on hand, we have an application in a chain for that. Right? That's why we have so many different products in our catalog. Is we want to cover everyone from the weekend warrior all the way to the tip top professional to the tree surgeon. You know, we got everything in between.
And going through, like what we talked about yesterday, sharpening the teeth individually. Because when I first, before I came here, I didn't understand how you guys sharpen teeth. I was like, did they put the chain all together and then sharpen it? And then once I went through the tour, I saw that you guys actually sharpen the tooth. The tooth is made and then it's individually sharpened and then you put the chain together.
Right.
Yep.
So maybe you can enlighten on that, why you do that way.
I'd love to. Back to, it's a great segue from what we were just talking about as far as application and balance, right? We can actually attack the cutters in a certain way and fixture them, which is even more important. We can hold the cutter just so. Let me step back a little bit. We all know how ropey chain is. And it's kind of hard to hold on to. You can crank your tension on your saw and try to file by hand on your saw, and there's still going to be a little bit of movement. We don't like that. We want to be precise. We want our cutters to be exactly the same from left hand to right hand, right? So we anchor them in a stage, or a pedestal is what we actually call them. We anchor them on the pedestal and then introduce the wheel to that, so we can precisely control where that grinding wheel and that radius is going. That way we get optimal cutting performance. Now, there are some cases out on the floor that are not plunge grind to where we put geometries on that you cannot with a file, right? Because we're trying to strike that out-of-box balance of pinnacle performance with pinnacle durability, right? And we can do that with a shape that you can't actually attain while the chain is assembled, right? Or else you'll go digging into your tie straps, or even worse, your drive links.
And I'm into my tie straps, and that's a bad thing.
We don't want to do that. We don't want to do that, especially in Harvester. Please don't do that.
Right.
In both round and square, no matter what you're filing, if you try to accomplish your grind, you will get into the strap, right? I mean, it's going to happen.
Yep. It's going to happen.
That's just one of those out-of-the-box features that we put in there as a nicety. You can take your file to it, but through our means of testing our fundamental understanding of the geometries of our metal forming and the angles we put in via grind, it's really hard to beat a factory grind. Now, having said that, if you have a little more power at your disposal, take a couple of passes off those depth gauges
To accommodate, yeah.
to get a little. You soak up a little more of that power and make a few more chips, a bit faster.
There's so many variables, and then it goes back to the wood too. You got
Absolutely.
all these different woods, and the East Coast guys got hardwoods, and Europe's got different wood than we have here on the West Coast, and some guys are in the redwoods or cedar, and it's like softer, and you can get away with crazy amounts of off the rakers. And
Right.
I do it myself when I get way too greedy, and I'm constantly fighting the saw, which is a bad thing. So
Right.
yeah, I have an old Sylvie raker grinder, and I get going. I want to do these chains fast. I just take too much off, and I tell it right in the video. Yeah, I got a bad chain today, guys. It's just it really like fatigues you if you take too much off.
Right.
And like when I get tired, I just change the chain. I was telling you guys earlier, put a new chain on, and your life's better.
So I use a term called politeness when it comes to chain, and that may not make sense to everyone, but I'm a chain sommelier, right? Politeness of chain is a flat response curve, right? Let me shift over to automotive for a second. It may make a little more sense. I drive a 6-liter LS in my truck every day. It makes all of its power up at 5,500 RPM, right? So I wish it made all of its power between 1,000 and 2,500. I wish it did, but it doesn't. It's not a diesel.
It's not a big block.
So the politeness of chain is a sensitivity. When say 500i at 9,000 RPM, it's kind of happy. I realize it rattles off at 14,000, but when it's cutting, 9,000 is kind of where it's at. And it can be that nature of that saw can be a little bit peaky. It can be. So if you have a chain that accents that kind of peaky torque curve that it has and is flat, from 7,000 all the way up to 10,000, You're getting meaningful, good cutting through there.
It'd be good.
You know, there's a very
Yeah.
polite chain.
Yeah.
Now, if we have a very aggressive chain, you may be narrowed up to right at 9,000,
Yeah.
and that's fatiguing as well.
Yeah.
And then
Yep.
guys trying to put too big of sprockets on you, it actually slows down also.
Yeah, but you can tune your chain to accommodate that higher speed
Accommodate.
if that's the feel that you're looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah. Changing your sprocket regularly.
Oh,
We
yeah.
can talk about that.
It's huge.
It's huge.
It's huge. Our factory recommendation is 2 loops of chain, brand new, filed end of life, and then you change the sprocket, and that equates to roughly 20 thousandths worth of wear on the on the sprockets, not just rims but also spurs. And the reason why that is so important and critical is because the drive system will become out of pitch, and then you're putting a chain that's in pitch on an out of pitch system, and you'll get instantaneous stretch. So in effect, what you've done is you put a new chain on a worn out sprocket, and now you've basically destroyed the chain.
Because when the
Stretch.
drivers approach into the sprocket, is it pulling them together and then
It's basically pulling them apart.
Pulling
under
them
tension.
pulling them
Right.
apart?
Yeah.
There's other artifacts that happen as well at that time, right? So as the chain wears, it puts indentations into
Yep.
the inside grooves of the drive or the drive sprocket, in addition to the outside surface. We have indicators on our sprockets that show you when you're kind of at end of life if the tie strap heel or cutter heel is touching the bottom of that indicator. Not everyone looks at those, unfortunately.
No.
But what happens though is that damage that's there, or that wear over time, gets imparted into the chain.
Yep.
We call it point loading. So imagine that let's use just general weight. We have 100 pounds over the course of 1 inch. That has nothing to do with chain. It's just an example. 100 pounds on an inch, but now we have such wear characteristics that we're condensing that down to 1/4 of an inch. Now we have 100 pounds on 1/4 of an inch, and we keep hammering it and hammering it at, I don't know, 9,000 RPM, let's say.
Okay.
Right now we're point loading on those tie straps and those cutter heels, potentially putting cracks in and putting artifacts into the chain. So not only are you stretching your chain apart, making it out of pitch, but you're also damaging the footprint of that chain also.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm a huge proponent of taking good care of those sprockets.
Because you can take a brand new chain, put it on the junk sprocket,
Wreck it.
and it's going to wreck it.
Yep.
Yeah.
It'll be right.
100%.
So,
100%.
and you guys have the lines in the sprocket to show the indicator.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is it usually 20 thousandths of depth? I mean, if you're running a different sprocket than your guys' is it about 20 thousandths of depth if you were to
Yeah.
check it?
roughly.
Or?
That's hard to measure. So if you're
It
gonna,
is.
if you're going to stick your caliper in there, the
Yeah.
tail of your caliper in there, you'd have to have a beginning state.
Yeah.
Right, but the wear is uneven. I don't Google it over there on the whiteboard, but I realize we're on camera here. The wear on the sprocket isn't uniform because we have a toe and a heel that's hitting the sprocket. So we have indicators for the toe and the heel, so you can visually see it. It's going to be very difficult to measure with a caliper.
Okay.
Visually. Usually when I talk to customers and they're complaining about stretch, I have them check their drive system. And I tell them if there's any blatantly obvious wear patterns, the safest route is to replace it. Don't wait until the chain doesn't go around and the saw is revving at 10,000 RPM. You're way past the point of no
Yeah.
return at that point.
It's not extracting the optimal value out of the product.
Absolutely.
Well, yesterday we were talking about how you guys come to the point to where this is the grind and everything. They have a machine. It's a robot, and we can't show the whole robot. Jake did let me film a little bit of the robot making some cuts, so we'll scan over to that and you guys can see what that looks like. But there's a lot of stuff we can't show you guys. That's why we're doing it here in the deal. These guys work really hard to keep everything under this building, so we can't show it. But they do super cool stuff here, really neat. And I was just wanting to pick Jake and Glenn's brain for a little bit, but
Yeah, let's definitely do this again. Next time we'll have some
Absolutely.
props and we can talk about read and chain.
and if
Yeah.
you guys want to see anything, put it in the comments. And if you guys want to see this conversation happen again, what you want to touch on, or what you guys want to see out of Oregon products, or stuff that you like about Oregon products, or want to see them come out with, put it in the comments, and that would be great to get that information out here.
Great, very interested to hear it.
We love
So-
feedback like that.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
I
Hey,
appreciate you taking
coming
time
out
here.
here. Really.
Thank you, Glenn.
Welcome.
Fantastic.
Anytime.
Thank you, guys.